I booked a small Airbnb because I needed a quiet place to finish a contract job. It was late March, still cold at night, and hotels near the city center were overpriced. The listing showed a narrow studio behind a larger house. One room, one window, a short gravel path from the street. The photos looked clean and neutral. White walls, gray couch, cheap table. Nothing personal. That was what I wanted. The address sat in a residential area with older homes and mature trees. When I arrived, the street was silent except for a distant road and the hum of traffic far away. The main house was a two-story structure with peeling paint and dark windows. The Airbnb unit was a converted garage at the back. A motion light came on as I walked down the side path. It stayed on longer than expected, bright and harsh, buzzing faintly. The door opened with a keypad. Inside, the space felt smaller than the photos suggested. The ceiling was low. The air smelled like cleaning spray mixed with something stale, like cardboard left in a damp place. I set my bag down and stood still for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. The single window faced the back fence. The glass was cloudy and streaked. A blind hung crooked, one slat missing. The floor was laminate, scratched in wide arcs, as if furniture had been dragged back and forth many times. The couch sagged in the middle. A throw blanket lay folded on one arm, but the fold looked practiced, not casual. The kitchenette was against one wall, with a small sink, a hot plate, and a fridge that hummed louder than normal. The bathroom door was open. The shower curtain was already closed. I did a quick walkthrough. The bed was against the far wall, pressed under the window. The mattress felt thin. The sheets were clean but smelled faintly of something old, like dust trapped in fabric. I noticed a smoke detector on the ceiling. Its plastic yellowed. There was a small shelf above the desk with two empty hooks screwed into it. The hooks had scratches around them, as if things had been hung and removed often. I told myself it was fine. It was cheap. I was only staying a few nights. That evening, I worked at the desk. The chair wobbled. The light overhead flickered when I turned on the hot plate to boil water. I ate instant noodles and listened to the fridge cycle on and off. The unit shared a wall with the main house. I could hear low vibrations through it. Not voices, just movement, weight shifting. Something heavy set down and lifted again. Around midnight, I went to bed. The room was darker than expected. The motion light outside turned on again, casting sharp lines through the blind. I lay on my side, facing the wall. The mattress creaked when I shifted. The air felt dry, then suddenly cold, like a vent had turned on somewhere. I woke up sometime later with the feeling that the room had changed. Not in a dramatic way, just off. The fridge was quiet. The air felt still. The motion light was off. I lay there, listening. From the other side of the wall came a faint sound, like slow footsteps on wood, spaced evenly back and forth. It went on for several minutes, then stopped. I did not check the time. I did not get up. I waited until sleep returned. The next morning, I noticed the bathroom mirror had streaks that were not there before. Long marks at shoulder height, wiped clean in uneven arcs. The shower curtain was pulled back slightly. The floor mat was damp. I assumed humidity or cleaning residue. I told myself I had not paid attention the night before. I worked all day. Around noon, the motion light outside turned on again, even though the sun was bright. It stayed on for nearly an hour. When it finally shut off, the sudden shadow made the room feel smaller. That afternoon, I stepped outside to get fresh air. The back fence was higher than I expected, solid wood with no gaps. On one panel, near the ground, were dark marks, irregular and smudged. I did not touch them. I noticed the gravel path had footprints that were not mine. The pattern suggested someone had walked back and forth several times, stopping near the door. That night, I locked the door and pushed the small table against it, more for comfort than security. I lay in bed with the light off, eyes open. The fridge hummed. The wall ticked as it cooled. Then the movement started again. Slow steps, closer this time. I could feel the vibration through the mattress. Something brushed against the shared wall, a soft scrape, then pressure like a shoulder leaning. The steps stopped directly opposite the bed. I stayed still. My breathing felt loud. The pressure eased. The steps moved away, then returned, repeating the same pattern. Back and forth, back and forth. It went on for a long time. Eventually, exhaustion took over. In the morning, the table had been moved. Not much, just enough to leave a gap between it and the door. I knew I had pushed it tight. The door was still locked. The floor beneath the table showed fresh scratches, lighter than the older ones. I checked my bag. Nothing missing. My laptop was where I left it. The window was still locked. The blind hung the same way. I considered leaving. I also considered that stress and lack of sleep were affecting my judgment. I told myself there was a simple explanation. Shared walls, old house, poor insulation. That afternoon, I noticed something new. The empty hooks above the desk were no longer empty. One held a thin wire loop, like part of a hanger, bent and twisted. The metal was warm when I touched it, as if it had been handled recently. I set it back and washed my hands. I tried to focus on work, but my attention kept drifting to small details. The way the fridge door closed a little too slowly. The way the bathroom fan took several seconds to start after I flipped the switch. The way the motion light outside came on whenever I moved near the back of the unit, even inside. That night, I did not sleep. The movement started earlier. The steps were faster, uneven. There was a dull thump against the wall, then another. The bed frame rattled. At one point, something brushed the window from outside, a soft dragging sound across the glass. The blind shifted slightly. I waited until morning. When daylight came, I packed my bag. As I bent to zip it, I saw something under the bed. A strip of fabric, dark and stiff with age, looped around one of the bed frame supports. It looked like it had been cut, not torn. I did not pull it out. I did not want to see what it was attached to. I left the unit and walked around the main house. One of the windows on the ground floor was boarded from the inside. Another had thick curtains pinned shut. Near the side of the house, close to where the shared wall would be, I noticed a second keypad on a door I had not seen before. The door had fresh paint around the frame, a slightly different color from the rest of the house. I drove away and stopped at a cafe several blocks away. I sat there for a long time, hands wrapped around a mug I did not drink from. I searched public records on my phone. The property had been reported several times over the years for disturbances. No crimes listed, no charges, just complaints about noise, unauthorized occupants, people seen entering and leaving the back structure at odd hours. I contacted the platform support and reported what I found. I did not include speculation. I described facts, the movement, the changes, the items. I checked into a hotel that night. A week later, I received a notice that the listing had been removed pending investigation. I never heard more than that. I still think about that small unit. I think about how carefully neutral it was, how little it revealed. I think about the hooks, the scratches, the way the space felt used, not lived in. I do not believe in anything beyond simple human behavior. Someone had access to that place. Someone moved through it when they thought no one would notice. The horror was not in what might have happened, but in how easily it could have continued if I had stayed. I booked the place because it was practical. I needed somewhere close to a temporary job site, only a week, and the price was lower than any hotel in the area. The listing showed a small single-story house in a quiet neighborhood. Fresh renovation, simple furniture, good lighting. The reviews mentioned cleanliness and convenience. Nothing emotional, nothing personal. I arrived late on a Sunday evening. The house looked recently finished in a way that felt rushed. New siding, new windows, uneven landscaping. The porch light was harsh white instead of warm. Inside, the smell hit immediately. Paint, bleach, and something synthetic that lingered in the back of my throat. The floors were spotless. The walls were bare. The furniture looked chosen in bulk, not lived with. A couch that felt unused. A table without marks. No books. No decorations. No signs anyone stayed longer than a night. The first night passed quietly. The neighborhood stayed still. No dogs. No traffic. The house settled with sharp pops as the temperature dropped. I slept light but uninterrupted. The second day, I worked long hours and came back after dark. I noticed the basement door when I went to throw away trash. It was at the end of a short hallway near the laundry closet. Plain wood, painted white, no handle, just a recessed pull. I had walked past it before without registering it. That bothered me more than the door itself. I tried opening it. It did not budge at first. Not locked, just stiff. The kind of resistance that comes from disuse, not force. I pulled harder and felt it give slightly, then stop again. I let go. The smell near the door was different from the rest of the house. Less chemical, more dry and dusty. The listing had never mentioned a basement. That alone meant nothing, but it stuck with me. Renovated houses often seal off old spaces. I told myself that was all it was. That night I slept poorly. The house felt sealed, like air moved only when I did. In the morning I stood in the kitchen and listened. The refrigerator hummed. Nothing else. After work on the third day, curiosity won. I opened the basement door again. This time it moved slowly, scraping along the frame. The hinges groaned like they had not been used in a long time. Cold air rose from below. Not damp, just stale. The stairs were narrow and steep. The walls were unfinished concrete painted gray. The light switch sat at the top. When I flipped it, fluorescent tubes flickered to life with a sharp buzz. The light stayed on without wavering. At the bottom was a single open room. No cobwebs, no debris. The floor was clean concrete. Metal shelving units lined every wall. Each shelf held clear plastic storage bins with snap-on lids. Hundreds of them. They were arranged with precision. Same size, same orientation. Labels facing outward. I stepped closer and read the nearest label. Black marker on white tape. A date range. A last name. A short note that read stayed 5 nights. The next bin read stayed full week. Another read left early. The handwriting was consistent across all of them. Neat, controlled, slight slant to the right. Some labels were yellowed with age. Others looked newer but still worn. None looked fresh. I moved along the shelves. The dates went back years. Not decades, but long enough that the earliest bins had faded ink and brittle plastic. I noticed patterns. Stays of similar length. Names that repeated with long gaps between them. Notes that became more detailed in recent years. Extended stay. No issues. Complained about noise. Did not return. I felt my pulse in my ears. My body stayed calm in a way that felt mechanical. I kept reading. Near the center shelf at eye level was a bin with my first name on it. Only my first name. No last name. The ink was faint, like it had been written long ago and exposed to light. Under my name was a blank space where dates should have been. No note, just the name. I stood there longer than made sense. My thoughts slowed instead of racing. I touched the lid with one finger. Dust came off on my skin. This bin had been sitting there for a long time. Longer than my booking. Longer than my arrival. The ink told that story clearly. I did not open it. I stepped back and looked at the shelves as a whole. The room was not storage. It was record keeping. Someone had tracked people the way others track inventory. The notes were not souvenirs. They were observations. I went upstairs and packed immediately. I did not rush, but I did not linger. I did not forget anything. I did not clean. I left the basement light on. I did not close the door. I drove to a gas station and sat in the car with the engine running. My hands shook only after I stopped moving. I contacted the rental platform through the app and selected the option for unsafe listing. I described what I found in plain terms. I uploaded photos of the basement shelves and the bin with my name. The response came faster than expected. Within minutes, the booking was canceled and refunded in full. No follow-up questions. No request for clarification. The message was brief and final. Leave the property immediately if still on site. Do not return. By the time I checked again an hour later, the listing no longer existed. The host profile showed an error page. The house address returned no results through the app. A few days later, I received an email confirming the host account had been removed for violating safety policies. No further details were provided. I did not ask for them. I did my own digging instead. Property records showed the house had changed hands twice in a short period. Bought, sold, flipped, and rented. The current owner was an LLC registered under a generic name. No personal history, no social presence. I contacted a local inspector I found through public records. He told me, without naming the property, that some flippers seal off basements and crawl spaces to hide prior use. Old hoarding, unauthorized subletting, sometimes surveillance setups. He said labeling bins like that was not illegal on its own. People collect strange things. What matters is intent and access. The explanation settled slowly. The house had likely been used for short-term rentals long before it was listed officially. Guests cycled through. Someone documented them. Names were gathered through bookings, IDs, mail, or simple observation. My name could have come from a previous inquiry, a canceled reservation, or data reused across platforms. The faded ink meant planning, not prediction. I had been selected, not foreseen. The fear did not come from mystery, came from logistics, from knowing how easily personal details move between systems, how quietly someone can track patterns without breaking laws, how a clean house can hide careful habits. I never returned to that area. I stopped using short-term rentals for work. Hotels cost more, but they feel temporary in a way that private houses do not. That basement was not meant to scare anyone. It was meant to exist unnoticed. I noticed it by accident. That was the only mistake made. I stayed there because my apartment flooded after a pipe burst in the unit above mine. It happened at night. By morning, the ceiling had collapsed in one corner and water soaked everything I owned. Insurance arranged repairs but could not offer housing. I needed a place fast, somewhere close to work, somewhere clean enough that I could think. I booked the Airbnb the same day. The listing showed a modern unit inside a newer building. Concrete floors, white walls, minimal furniture, keyless entry, no personal items in sight. The photos looked calm and controlled, like a space designed to leave no trace of whoever passed through it. That felt right after the chaos of my apartment. The building stood on a quiet street lined with small businesses that closed early. From the outside, it looked like offices converted into short-term rentals. Gray panels, narrow windows, no balconies. The lobby had no desk, only a keypad at the door and a security camera mounted high in one corner. I entered a code sent through the app and the door unlocked with a soft click. The unit was on the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled faintly of paint and disinfectant. No art on the walls. The unit door opened the same way as the lobby. Inside, the space was exactly as shown. One room divided by furniture, a low bed, a small couch, a table with a single chair. The kitchen was built into one wall, all flat surfaces and hidden handles. The bathroom sat behind a sliding door made of frosted glass. Everything looked new or carefully replaced. The floors were spotless. The bedding was tight and smooth. The air felt cool and dry, like a place that never opened windows. I set my bag down and walked the room slowly. No clutter, no smell beyond cleaning products. The only sound came from a vent above the bathroom door, pushing air at a steady rate. That first night I slept poorly, but that was expected. My phone buzzed in the morning before my alarm. A message from the host appeared. It referenced my sleep and my plans for the day in a casual way. Felt friendly, automated, maybe. I assumed the app sent notifications when guests became active. I got up, showered, dressed, and left for work. When I returned that evening, the unit looked unchanged. The bed was still made the way I left it. The trash can was empty. No cleaning had taken place. The door log on the app showed no entry besides mine. The next morning, the same thing happened. My phone buzzed minutes after I woke. Another message that matched my timing too closely to ignore, but not enough to alarm me. I brushed it off again. Hosts often scheduled check-ins. It was part of the service. On the 3rd morning, I noticed the timing more clearly. I woke before my alarm and lay still for several minutes. Eyes open, phone on the table. Nothing happened. When I sat up and swung my legs off the bed, my phone vibrated almost immediately. The message appeared less than a minute later. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. The content was harmless. The timing was not. I spent the day distracted. I replayed the last few mornings in my head. The messages always came after I moved, not after the alarm. On the first day, I had woken before it rang. On the second, I had turned it off quickly. The pattern was there. That night, I slept with the light on. The unit remained quiet. No sounds beyond the air vent. No footsteps in the hallway. No door clicks. The next morning, I tested it. I woke early and stayed in bed. I did not reach for my phone. I did not move my arms. I stayed still long enough that my body stiffened and my thoughts wandered. 10 minutes passed, then 20. No message arrived. When I finally got up, my phone buzzed within a minute. The feeling that settled in my chest was not panic. It was focus. Something simple was happening. Something physical. I needed to find it. I spent that evening examining the unit with more care. I checked the smoke detector, the thermostat, the corners of the ceiling. I looked behind the television, under the bed, inside the kitchen cabinets. Everything looked normal. No extra wires. No blinking lights. In the bathroom, I studied my reflection longer than usual. The mirror was mounted flush to the wall, larger than necessary for the space. The light above it was bright and even. As I leaned closer, I noticed a faint line along one edge where the mirror did not sit perfectly flat. I pressed gently. It did not move. I turned off the fan and stood still. The room felt too quiet. The vent above the door continued to push air, but there was another opening I had not noticed before. A narrow slot cut into the wall behind the mirror, hidden by the glass. It was placed at head height. I fetched a flashlight from my bag and shined it along the edge. The light caught something behind the glass. A dark circle. A lens. My hands felt steady as I slid the mirror upward. It lifted easily, guided by a rail. Behind it sat a small cavity cut into the wall. Inside was a camera mounted on a bracket, angled slightly downward. A thin cable ran from it into the wall, not toward the visible outlets, but deeper into the structure. The device had no indicator light. No brand name I recognized. Felt warm when I touched it. I followed the cable as far as I could without tools. It disappeared behind the drywall. The camera was not connected to the unit's Wi-Fi. I checked the network list on my phone. Nothing new appeared. Whatever powered it did not rely on the system provided to guests. I replaced the mirror and sat on the edge of the bed. The unit felt smaller now. The clean surfaces felt deliberate, designed to leave nothing for the eye to catch except what was meant to be seen. I left the unit and sat in my car. I contacted the platform support and reported what I found. I included photos and video. I described the messages and their timing. I did not accuse. I documented. The response came quickly. They asked me to leave the unit and assured me the listing would be investigated. They offered a refund and assistance relocating. I drove to a hotel that night and slept without checking my phone. 2 days later, I received confirmation that the listing had been removed. The reason given was a violation of surveillance policy. The message was brief and formal. No details about what would happen next. Curiosity kept me checking. A week later, I searched the platform again. The unit appeared under a different listing name. The photos were similar but not identical. The furniture had been rearranged. The mirror was still there. The host name was new. The account showed positive reviews from recent stays. I reported it again. I included screenshots. I pointed out the similarities. The response this time was slower. They thanked me and said they would look into it. I never returned to that building. Repairs finished at my apartment and I moved back in. The ceiling was new. The walls were dry. Life returned to routine. What stayed with me was not the camera itself. It was the precision. The host did not guess when I woke. They knew. They watched movement, not sound. They powered the device separately so it would not appear on the network. They kept the unit empty so nothing blocked the view. They messaged just enough to remind me of their presence without revealing it. There was no mystery left by the end. No unanswered questions. Someone used short-term rentals to watch strangers in private moments. When one listing was removed, they created another. The system allowed it because identity checks stopped at the surface. I learned how thin the line is between convenience and access. Keyless entry means keys can be shared without trace. Minimal design means fewer places to hide what should not be there. Automation makes patterns easy to track. The flooding forced me out of my home, but it was the stay that changed how I see temporary spaces. I now look for imperfections, for signs of human mess, for places that feel lived in. Perfect rooms leave too much room for control. I booked the Airbnb on a weekday, needing a place to stay while I handled some paperwork at a courthouse across town. The listing was small, in a quiet neighborhood of single-story houses. Photos showed a modest interior, a compact living room with a couch and a coffee table, a small kitchen with basic appliances, and a bedroom with a window overlooking a backyard. The host had a high rating, and the price was reasonable, so I didn't hesitate. The street was lined with old oak trees, and the pavement cracked under their shadows. There were no cars parked nearby, no children playing, just the distant sound of traffic. When I arrived, the mailbox had the numbers painted neatly, and the front door had a keypad. I entered the code from the app, and the door clicked open without a sound. The air inside smelled faintly of cleaning solution and something else I couldn't place, like the faint tang of old metal. The floors were hardwood, polished but scratched in places, and a small rug sat in the middle of the living room. A single lamp provided most of the light, and I left the overhead fixture off. The couch cushions were stiff, and the coffee table bore the faint circular stains of past cups. The kitchen counters were clear, except for a small knife block and a kettle. I set my bag down and walked through the space, noting the faint hum of a refrigerator and the soft click of the heater cycling. The bedroom was narrow, the bed pressed against the wall with only a narrow passage to the window. The sheets smelled clean, but not fresh. They had the faint, lingering odor of laundry detergent left too long. The window overlooked a fence and part of a neighbor's yard, the branches of a tree scraping softly against the glass in the evening wind. That first night, I unpacked just enough to settle in. I ate a small dinner, washed the dishes, and left the lights dim. The room felt small, but not uncomfortable. I set an alarm for early the next morning, worried about the paperwork I had to handle. I slept poorly. I kept waking up to the sound of cars in the distance and the occasional shift of the house settling. At some point, I noticed the floor creak in a pattern I didn't recognize, faint but deliberate. I assumed it was old wood, uneven boards responding to temperature or humidity. The next morning, I got up, showered, and dressed. The bathroom was functional, small, with a mirror above the sink and a vent in the ceiling. The mirror had a faint smudge along one edge, as if someone had brushed it accidentally, but I dismissed it. During the day, I noticed small oddities. The living room lamp seemed slightly tilted, though I hadn't touched it. The chair at the table was closer to the wall than I remembered. Nothing alarming, just enough to make me pause. I told myself it was old floors shifting, someone cleaning before I arrived, or my mind adjusting to a new space. That night, I slept later than usual. When I got up to make coffee, I noticed the kitchen drawer slightly ajar, even though I was certain I had closed it. The refrigerator hummed at a higher pitch than before. I paused, listening to the quiet. There was no sound beyond the appliances and the faint wind against the window. The following morning, I left early and returned late. I began noticing more subtle changes. Small items seemed moved. The kettle sat on the stove differently. A cushion on the couch was turned the other way. The smudges on the counters were slightly different, as if rearranged deliberately. Nothing was missing, nothing broken, just moved. I started paying more attention. I timed my movements through the apartment. The creak of the floorboards matched my steps, but sometimes there were creaks when I was still. The hallway outside my bedroom door had a faint, hollow sound, like something heavy had been dragged just beyond the wall. On the third day, I inspected the bedroom more closely. I checked under the bed, behind the nightstand, inside closets. Everything was empty, neat, just as it should be. But the feeling persisted, a weight at the edge of awareness. Late that night, I sat on the couch reading. The room was dim, the street outside quiet. I noticed the rug had shifted slightly from where I remembered placing it. I stood and adjusted it, and in that moment, my eyes caught a narrow line between the baseboard and the wall, a gap that seemed unusual. I knelt and ran my fingers along it. Behind the wood, I felt the edge of something solid, rectangular, not part of the construction. I pulled it gently, came free, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a notebook, filled with tiny, precise notes. They recorded dates, times, observations, descriptions of how someone had moved through the unit, what had been noticed, what had been handled. The last entry was the day before my arrival. The realization sank in slowly, then solidly. Someone had been watching. I spent the next hours documenting everything. I photographed the compartment, the notebook, and the unit as it was. Nothing was missing, no evidence of intrusion beyond what I had discovered. But the deliberate recording of movements left no doubt. I left the Airbnb that night and contacted the platform. I described what I found, sent photos, and explained the patterns I had observed. They offered a refund and removed the listing. I did not return. Weeks later, I checked the platform again. The host's account remained active under a different name. Listings with the same style, the same minimal furniture, appeared in different neighborhoods. The notebook, the compartment, the careful attention to movement. All of it had been part of a pattern I would never fully know. I returned to my own apartment after repairs, but the experience stayed with me. I became meticulous about signs of presence, about the way spaces could be controlled without leaving a trace. The Airbnb had not harmed me physically, but it had forced me to reconsider trust in temporary spaces. I now check every corner, every vent, every line along a wall or mirror. It was not paranoia. It was understanding the precision someone else had used to observe and catalog lives that were supposed to be private. The weight lifted slowly, only after I documented everything and returned to a space where I controlled access. But I still think about those minimal units, the careful placement of furniture, the silent observation, and the meticulous recording. They were designed to leave no obvious trace, yet everything was calculated. The experience was real, grounded, and inescapable. It left a lesson about control, observation, and the thin line between convenience and exposure. I booked the Airbnb because my apartment had become unbearable. The heating system failed during an unusually cold week, and the landlord had been slow to respond. I needed a place that felt normal, somewhere quiet where I could focus on work without worrying about pipes bursting or waking up in a frozen apartment. The listing was a small, modern unit tucked behind a row of older houses. The photos showed a clean, minimal space with white walls, a small sofa, a desk, and a bed neatly made. The host had excellent reviews, and the location was convenient. When I arrived, the street was almost empty. A few cars sat parked along the curb, older sedans, and a single delivery van. The houses on either side looked lived in but quiet, lawns neatly trimmed. The unit itself was behind a narrow gate and down a short path. The door was keyless, and the code from the app worked on the first try. The door clicked open, and the air inside felt slightly cooler than outside, dry and still. The living space was smaller than I expected. The floors were laminate, light wood, and the edges of the boards had tiny scratches, evidence of past use. The couch was firm and slightly angled toward the wall-mounted television. A small table with a single chair sat near the kitchenette. The appliances were new or well-maintained. A kettle, a toaster, and a mini fridge filled the counter space. Everything looked tidy, almost too tidy. The bedroom was set against the far wall, the bed pressed into a corner beneath the window. The sheets smelled faintly of detergent, clean but carrying the subtle odor of fabric that had sat folded too long. The first night, I slept fitfully. I kept waking at odd hours, noticing small creaks in the floorboards, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the quiet shifting of air through the vent. Nothing alarming, just sounds that seemed louder in the small space. The next morning, I woke to a message from the host. It was friendly and neutral, asking if I had slept well and suggesting a good time for breakfast nearby. I assumed it was automated and didn't think much of it. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Each morning, my phone buzzed within minutes of me waking. The timing was precise, too precise to be random. The content remained neutral, sometimes mentioning the weather or offering local tips. I tried adjusting my routine to see if it was truly automated. On a morning when I stayed in bed past my usual alarm, no message arrived. When I got up suddenly at an unusual hour, a message appeared almost immediately. The pattern was clear. Someone was aware of when I moved. I began noticing other things. The furniture seemed to shift subtly overnight. The couch cushions would be slightly angled differently. The small rug in front of the bed would sit a fraction of an inch away from where I had placed it. I told myself I was imagining it, but the sense of being observed grew. The unit remained empty, clean, and tidy, but the precision of these changes made the space feel less like a home and more like a carefully monitored environment. One afternoon, I examined the bathroom more closely. The room was small, with a frosted glass shower door and a mirror above the sink. I noticed the mirror did not sit perfectly flat against the wall. A small edge lifted slightly. I pressed on it gently, and it moved more than expected. I removed it entirely, revealing a narrow cavity cut into the wall. Inside was a small camera, mounted on a bracket and angled toward the center of the room. A thin cable ran from the camera into the wall, not toward any visible outlet or router. It was powered separately, entirely hidden from the Wi-Fi network. The discovery left me shaken. The host's account had been polite, professional, and neutral, but now I realized it had been deliberately observing me. Every precise message, every subtle movement of objects, was evidence of careful monitoring. The space had been designed to appear neutral and empty while allowing someone to watch. I documented everything, photographing the cavity, the camera, and the unit as it was. Nothing had been stolen or tampered with, but the presence of the device was a violation of privacy. I contacted the platform immediately. I described the situation, sent photos, and requested that the listing be removed. They responded quickly, confirming the listing had been deactivated and that the host had violated surveillance policies. They offered a refund and relocation assistance. I left the unit that evening and stayed in a hotel, unable to sleep until I was in a space where I could control my surroundings. Weeks later, I checked the platform again. The host's account remained active under a different name. New listings appeared, similarly minimal and modern. The mirror, the clean surfaces, the lack of personal items, all were consistent with the previous unit. It became clear that the host had a pattern: create spaces that felt neutral, tidy, and temporary, and observe guests without detection. Returning to my repaired apartment brought relief, but the experience stayed with me. I became meticulous about how spaces could be used to observe, how small details, furniture placement, vents, mirrors could hide surveillance. I no longer assumed a clean, minimal space was neutral. I now examined corners, openings, and gaps, looking for anything that could betray another presence. The Airbnb had not caused direct harm, but it had forced me to confront how easily someone could invade privacy in a way that felt invisible. The lesson was concrete. Appearances alone do not guarantee safety. Control of space and information can be absolute without ever showing itself. Even with the listing removed, the knowledge that the host could replicate the setup elsewhere lingered. The experience reshaped how I interacted with temporary housing and reminded me that observation can be quiet, precise, and completely believable. I can now walk into any rental and immediately check for signs of surveillance. I examine mirrors, vents, cabinets, and walls, looking for anything out of place. The fear has transformed into awareness. I sleep more soundly knowing how to protect myself, but the memory of that minimal, modern unit remains vivid. It was calm, tidy, and neutral, but it was also a controlled space, designed to observe without detection. That realization, slow and precise, is the part one carry with me. We rented the place for a long weekend because it was cheap and close to a trail system we had wanted to hike for years. 3 of us split the cost. The reviews were good in a quiet way, short comments about clean rooms and good views. Nothing emotional, nothing warning us off. The host started messaging the moment we booked. The messages were polite and detailed. Too detailed. He sent maps we did not ask for and notes about weather patterns we already understood. He listed trails we should avoid and times when it was better to stay inside. He mentioned which windows to keep shut at night and which lights to leave off so wildlife would not get confused. I assumed he was overprotective of the property or bored. The drive up took us into higher ground where the trees closed in and cell service faded in and out. The cabin sat off a narrow road behind a locked gate that opened with a code. It was larger than the photos suggested. 2 floors, wraparound deck, motion lights mounted high on the corners. The lights were off when we arrived. The woods pressed close on all sides, tall trunks and low brush, the kind of growth that absorbs sound. Inside, the cabin smelled recently cleaned. Not scented, just sharp and empty. The kitchen counters were bare. The floors were swept. The furniture felt placed with care. The place slept 6. We only needed 3 beds, but all of them were made. Every pillow showed a shallow dip like a head had rested there not long ago. The sheets were tucked tight with hospital corners. No wrinkles, no stray hairs. The extra rooms were not locked. They were prepared. I noticed cameras on the outside eaves when I stepped onto the deck. Small, dark domes angled toward the yard and driveway. That was not mentioned in the listing. The host had mentioned motion lights, but not cameras. I assumed they were for security and tried not to think about them. The first day passed without trouble. We hiked a short loop and came back before dark. As night fell, the woods went quiet in a way that felt staged. No wind, no insects. The motion lights snapped on around 9. White light flooded the trees at the edge of the clearing. No sound followed. The lights stayed on for a full minute, then shut off. 10 minutes later, they came on again. Same pattern, same silence. We stood on the deck and watched. No branches moved. No animals crossed the yard. The lights behaved as if something tall had passed through their range. Something that did not hurry. I checked the ground below. The soil was dry. No marks showed. We went inside and locked the doors. I pulled the curtains shut. The host had told us which windows to keep closed at night. I realized I had followed his instructions without questioning why. Sleep came in short pieces. The lights came on again after midnight. I woke to the glow pressing through the curtains. When I checked the time, it was the same interval as before. The lights stayed on longer this time. I heard nothing outside. No footsteps, no breathing. Just the soft hum of the electrical system and the distant click when the lights finally shut off. In the morning, we found nothing disturbed. The yard looked untouched. The deck was clean. The cameras remained pointed where they had been. The host sent another message asking how the first night went and reminding us to avoid a ridge trail due to unstable ground. I felt watched in a way I could not explain without sounding paranoid. We hiked again and returned late. Clouds moved in and the air grew heavy. As dusk fell, the motion lights stayed off longer than the night before. When they finally triggered, the light washed over the deck instead of the trees. That was when we saw the footprints. They started at the edge of the deck and moved toward the largest window. Bare footprints, wide and uneven, pressed into a thin layer of mud. The toes spread outward. The heel marks were deep. The prints stopped directly in front of the glass. The window itself was fogged from the outside only. A clear oval shape showed where someone had leaned close. The fog did not match the air temperature. It looked like breath. We did not open the door. We did not step outside. We stood back and looked at the prints through the glass until the light shut off and the woods swallowed everything again. That night, none of us slept. The lights triggered twice more. The cameras did not move. The windows stayed shut. In the early hours, I noticed a door we had not opened before. It sat off the main hallway behind a coat rack. The handle was scuffed. The lock was newer than the rest of the hardware. The listing had not mentioned a basement. In the morning, we packed without discussion. As we loaded the car, The host sent a final message commenting that most groups did not stay the full length of their booking. The message vanished minutes later. The app showed no record of it. We left through the gate and drove until cell service returned. Back home, curiosity turned into unease. I checked the property records online. The cabin belonged to a man who lived less than a mile away. He owned several parcels in the area. I searched his name and found a local forum post about trail maintenance. He volunteered as a lookout during hunting season. He knew the woods. He knew movement patterns. I contacted the rental platform and reported the cameras and the missing message. They opened a case and asked for photos. I sent everything we had. A few days later, a representative called me back. The host had admitted to monitoring the exterior cameras live. He claimed it was for safety and wildlife tracking. He admitted to entering the property during stays to check systems when guests were out hiking. He said the footprints were his, left when he stepped onto the deck to adjust a light sensor. He said he often walked barefoot to avoid tracking dirt inside. The fog on the window came from his breath as he checked for drafts. The basement door led to a utility space where he stored tools and a cot. The platform removed the listing. The host account was suspended. The explanation covered every detail. Nothing supernatural remained. What stayed with me was the planning, the advice about when to be outside, the prepared beds, the cameras angled to watch arrivals and departures, the lights triggered to announce presence without sound, the message about groups not lasting. We had rented a place meant to feel remote. It was not empty, it was controlled. Someone had shaped our stay from a distance and stepped close enough to leave marks without crossing a line that would force a confrontation. The fear came from knowing how easily privacy can be constructed and removed. We had gone looking for quiet and found attention instead. I booked the place because I wanted distance from everything familiar. The divorce had ended quietly but left a constant noise in my head. I wanted silence that felt earned, not rented by the hour. I searched for something cheap, rural, and empty. The listing showed only exterior shots and one photo of a living room taken from a corner. The description was short: old family home, minimal neighbors, great for reflection. No host photo, no reviews older than a few months. I told myself that meant privacy. The drive took me farther than expected. Paved roads gave way to county lanes, then a narrow stretch that looked plowed but not traveled. The driveway cut off from the road without a sign. It ran straight through open ground before ending at the house. Snowbanks lined both sides, high and packed, with no breaks from tires or boots. I parked where the gravel met the snow and stepped out. The cold had weight. My footsteps sounded sharp and final. The house was 2 stories with a low roof and a deep porch. The siding was faded but intact. No lights were on. No motion sensor triggered. The key was in a lockbox with a simple code. Inside, the air smelled clean but old, like furniture polish and cold fabric. The temperature sat just above freezing. The heat worked after a few minutes, the kind that hissed through pipes before settling. Everything inside looked fixed in place. The couch cushions were firm and centered. The coffee table had no scratches. The rug showed no wear paths. The kitchen cabinets held dishes arranged by size and color. No clutter, no personal items left behind. The fridge was empty except for a box of baking soda. The bedroom had 1 dresser, 1 bed, and a closet with spare hangers facing the same direction. The walls held photographs in dark wooden frames. They covered the living room, the hallway, and the stairwell. None had captions or dates. Every image showed people inside the house. Different decades were obvious from clothing and hairstyles. Couples sat on the couch. Children stood near the window. Older men leaned against the banister. The furniture stayed the same in every photo. The same lamp, the same rug, the same framed picture of a field hung crooked above the television. The people changed. The house did not. I told myself it was a family tradition, generations posing in the same room. That explanation lasted until I noticed the faces. No one smiled. Every expression was neutral or tense. Many looked tired. A few stared straight at the camera with the same blank focus. None looked surprised to be photographed. I unpacked and cooked a simple meal. The house stayed silent except for the heating system. No wind hit the walls. No branches scraped the roof. The isolation felt heavy but manageable. I sat on the couch and noticed the mirror in the hallway. It hung at the exact angle needed to reflect the couch. From where I sat, I could see my own shoulder and the edge of my face. When I stood in the hallway, the mirror showed the couch in full view. It felt intentional, not decorative. I went upstairs and checked the rooms. Both were clean. Both had photographs. One showed a woman sitting on the bed I planned to use, hands folded, eyes unfocused. The bedding matched what I saw in the room. I turned the frame face down and left it on the dresser. Sleep came late. I lay on my back listening to the house adjust to the cold. Around 1:40 in the morning, I woke without a clear reason. The room felt different. Not warmer or colder, just arranged differently. The chair near the dresser sat closer to the bed. I assumed I had moved it earlier and forgotten. My head felt thick. I turned onto my side and closed my eyes. When I woke again, the mirror caught my attention. From the bedroom doorway, I could see the hallway mirror reflecting the living room couch. The angle seemed sharper than before. I walked downstairs and stood still. The couch faced the mirror more directly. I knew I had not moved it. The rug under it showed no drag marks. The legs sat in the same indentations. I checked the photos again. One frame near the stairs now leaned to the right. I straightened it. My hands left clear prints on the glass. I wiped them away with my sleeve. That was when I noticed the window. The living room window faced the open field. Snow covered everything outside. On the inside of the glass, faint marks caught the light. Handprints at shoulder height, fingers spread. The prints were old, oily, and layered. Some overlapped. None matched my hands. I pressed my palm next to one. The size was close. The placement suggested someone had stood outside, face close, watching inward. I checked every window. The same prints appeared on 3 sides of the house. All at the same height. All inside. None on the outside glass. The locks were intact. No damage to frames. No signs of forced entry. The porch showed no footprints except mine. The snow remained smooth and untouched. I stayed awake until morning. I kept the lights on and sat where I could see the mirror. Nothing moved while I watched. At dawn, I packed quickly. I did not eat. I did not shower. I loaded the car and stepped outside. The driveway had changed. The road beyond it showed fresh plow lines. The driveway itself was smooth and white, like it had not existed the day before. My tire tracks were gone. My footprints were gone. The snowbank at the entrance was solid, unbroken. I stood there longer than made sense, trying to understand how I had arrived at all. I checked my phone. The listing no longer existed. The host profile showed an error page. The address returned no results. I had cell service, but the place did not. I drove slowly through the snowbank, forcing a path back to the road. The car scraped and resisted but made it through. Once I reached town, I stopped at a gas station and searched the address again using a different map service. The house appeared under a different name. Not a rental. Private residence marked as seasonal. I contacted the county office later that week. The clerk told me the property belonged to a trust. The original owner died years earlier. The house was maintained by a caretaker hired to keep it from falling apart. No one lived there full-time. The caretaker lived nearby and visited after storms to check the roof and heating. He had permission to enter when needed. I filed a report with the rental platform. They confirmed the listing was fraudulent. The account had been created with stolen information, payments routed through a third party. The photos matched public real estate records from an old sale. A week later, a deputy called me back. The caretaker had admitted to entering the house at night during my stay. He claimed he heard the heating system fail and went in to check it. He said he did not want to disturb me. He said he moved furniture to see if it would leave marks, to check for drafts. He said the photographs were his idea, taken over years of temporary occupants, meant to document wear and tear. He never asked permission. He never told anyone. The fingerprints came from his inspections. He leaned against the windows to look for cracks. The mirror angles were intentional. He liked to see the room from different positions while working. The driveway was not plowed because it was private. The plow stopped at the road. The explanation settled everything into place. Nothing supernatural remained. Only a man with access, habits, and poor judgment. The house was not watching itself. Someone else was. I never recovered the sense of isolation I went there to find. The silence I wanted had been filled without my knowledge. That was the part that stayed with me. I booked the place because the photos stopped me cold. I had been scrolling through listings late at night, half distracted, looking for somewhere cheap near a short contract job. One photo caught my eye and held it. A narrow hallway with beige walls and a low ceiling. A dark oval stain in the carpet near the far bedroom. A thin crack running diagonally above a doorframe. I knew that hallway. I had walked it barefoot for years. I told myself it was coincidence. Builders reused layouts. Old houses aged the same way. I zoomed in anyway. The light switch plate sat lower than modern code. The trim had a small chip at knee height. The mirror at the end of the hall hung slightly off-center. Every detail matched the house I grew up in, the one my parents sold when I left for college. I checked the address. Different city. Same state. Far enough that I could believe it was just similar. The price was low. The reviews were neutral. I booked it and tried to forget the feeling that had settled in my chest. The drive there took longer than expected. When I pulled up, the house looked exactly like I remembered, only painted a fresher color. Same shallow steps, same porch depth, same angle of the roofline. The yard had been cleared of the old shrubs, but the concrete path still had the same hairline cracks. I stood there longer than necessary before unlocking the door. The smell hit me immediately. Old dust baked into wood, heating oil from a tank that had been filled too many times, and a faint metallic note that always came from the basement after rain. That smell does not show up in photos. It lives in walls. It lives in memory. Inside, nothing had been modernized beyond the surface. New paint, new fixtures. The structure was untouched. I walked straight down the hall without thinking and stopped where my childhood bedroom door used to be. The carpet stain was there, cleaned but not removed. I knelt and pressed my fingers into it. Same texture, same give. I opened the closet. The inside of the door had shallow scratches near the bottom, uneven and layered. From when I was a kid and used to hide in there during storms, dragging toys against the wood without realizing it. No one sands the inside of a closet door. Those marks had survived decades. I checked the attic access. Same pull cord. Same warped panel. The bathroom medicine cabinet still stuck unless you lifted it slightly. I did not need to explore to know where everything was. My body moved on its own. I messaged the host through the app asking about the history of the house. The response came back polite and vague. They said they bought it years ago as an investment property and did not know much about who lived there before. That answer felt prepared. That night, I did not sleep. I lay on the bed listening to the heating system cycle the same way it used to, with a click, a pause, then a low hum that rose and settled. The house made the same noises at the same intervals. Nothing new announced itself. Nothing moved. The familiarity was worse than fear. In the morning, I opened the listing again and studied the photos with more care. That was when I noticed the reflection. In one hallway shot, taken from the living room side, the mirror at the end of the hall caught part of a figure. Someone standing just outside the frame, back turned. Same height as me, same slope of shoulders, same jacket I had been wearing for years, a dark one with a worn collar that folded inward. The timestamp on the photo showed it had been uploaded 3 weeks before my booking. I took screenshots and checked my own calendar. 3 weeks earlier, I had been out of state for work. I had not visited this area. I had not been near this house. I checked old photos of myself wearing that jacket. The creases matched. The way the fabric bent at the elbows matched. I did not confront the host. I contacted the rental platform and reported the issue. They asked for documentation. I sent everything. The listing was taken down that afternoon. I packed and left before sunset. Back home, I started looking for records, property sales, old listings, archived photos. Took time, but the picture came together. The house had been sold after my parents divorced, passed through several owners, then sat vacant for years. Eventually, it was bought by a company that specialized in flipping distressed properties. They had pulled photos from an old real estate listing to use as reference. That listing included a hallway shot taken by a photographer who had captured a reflection without noticing it. That reflection was not me. It was my father. The jacket was his. The build was his. The posture was his. I had inherited the same stance without realizing it. I had taken the jacket after he died and worn it for years. The scratches in the closet were not unique to me. He had noticed them too, but never fixed them. The smell was the same because nothing essential had changed. The host had not staged anything. They had reused old material without understanding it. The coincidence felt impossible because it was personal, not because it was planned. The house had not been watching me. It had simply been there, holding details that never belonged to anyone else. I did not stay in touch with the host. I did not return to the area. I stopped looking for places that felt familiar. Some houses are not meant to be revisited. They keep better records than people do.